Okay, in this video I'm going to run through a couple of tips and tricks for you. If you are new to Unreal Engine, this might be useful to you. Alright, so we'll start off with the levels and creating new levels. So in the starter content, currently I have the starter content because I decided to add that, when I created this project. Then I also have this vehicle variety pack. That's a pack of assets that I imported into the current project. Now, if I double click on any one of those, you can see you have a bunch of assets and you have maps, for example. Okay, I'll just go back. Same thing with the vehicle variety pack. You also have maps and various other things as well. So blueprints, for example, meshes and so forth. Okay, so let's say I want to create my own map. Well, firstly, again, I'll go to the root level. So where I have my top, the top kind of my folder structure for my project here. And I want to keep my things organized. So I'll go and create a new folder right at the top. And I'll name that accordingly. So if it's a small project, I'll just call it my game. So this should relate to your project, of course. This is just a demo. And as you go along, of course, you can kind of reshuffle things, create more folders to separate things out. Okay, so inside of this, I'll go and create another folder, call that maps. And now what I can do with that selected, you can see to the left, if this is not here, you can click on this. Okay, show and hide the sources panel. And I'll select that maps, I'll select that folder, click this drop down, and now I can create a new level. And it's not saved yet. So if you save all, you can see this has kind of an asterisk in this square right here with that image. You will see an asterisk. Now the same thing appears for blueprints and so on. If you have those created and it's not saved, it'll have kind of an asterisk right here. Click save all, save selected, and you'll see that is now saved. I'll double click on that and you can see my world is blank. Okay, even if I drag and drop something in here, it's really blank. So you have to go and add lights and stuff into your world. Now I'll have to do an extra video on that. There's kind of a setup that you go through with that. But another thing you can do is I'll go to File, for example, and then you can create a new level. All right. And you can see you have a bunch of options. Now the empty level will also have, just like we have here, it will basically have nothing in it. Whereas the default one, you can see we already have a skybox and stuff. So we basically already have some lighting and a floor piece of geometry to work with. So I'll just select that. And in this case, it wants me to save stuff, so I won't save. And now you can see we have this nice new level here. Now this will not actually be saved. You can see it's currently untitled. So I can save it in a few ways. You can save right here, okay? Or you can go to File and Save Current, or Save Current As. So I'll just save Current, and I'll just go and browse into My Game and Maps, and I'll just call this whatever, demo map or something like that. So here I have this blank kind of map, and I have another one right here with some lighting and stuff. So I prefer to start off with this one just because it saves me a bit of time to set up the lighting and so on. You can also right click in your content browser. This is another thing that people often miss when they are new. So I mentioned this right here, and you have this file menu as well. You can do new level, for example, and you can also right click right in here, and then you can do new level. Now, just like I mentioned, I'm just going to save all, doesn't matter, and you can see that this is also empty, okay? So that's the main difference. If you use this new level dialog, you'll get a bunch of presets to choose from. Whereas if you use this right click menu, the context menu, or if you use this drop down, you will basically get empty levels. So just keep those differences in mind. So let's say I have this map saved out, this demo map here, and each time I open the editor, right, I want to start working on my map. I want to add objects, into my scene, so actors, and so on. Now the problem is that sometimes when you open up the editor, it's going to open up a different map. So then you have to go in and look for your map, double click on that to open it up again, stuff like that. Okay, this can be tedious. So in the project settings, we thankfully have options that will help with this. So you can go to the project settings by clicking the settings drop down, so settings and then project settings, or you can go to edit and down here you have project settings. This will also open up a tab like this that you can dock right up here. Typically this will open up in the description section. You can also search up here, so publisher for example, and you can see that that will take me to that section. You can close out of that, clicking that X to close out of that search. And this description page, you can see lists out the description of your project, the project name, publisher, so company name, all of that stuff, legal stuff. You probably will not be too concerned with this right from the start of your project, but this is where you fill that stuff in. You can go to all settings and this will list out everything, right? And then you can just search right at the top here if you want to do that. With the all settings option selected, you can see all of the subsections show up in this list that you can scroll through, right? Now, right underneath each section, you will see something like these settings are saved in defaultgame.ini or .ini, which is currently writable. So under maps and modes, for example, you'll see these settings are saved in defaultengine.ini, which is currently writable, and so forth. So basically what happens is your settings are saved out to actual files on your drive. Now again, you don't have to click save or anything. That is basically saved as you make your changes. Once you've finished making a change, that will basically get saved out to a file on your hard drive. You have different files for your settings, okay, all of the settings that relate to your specific project or to the engine as well. Now we'll talk about the engine settings a bit later. Okay, now what I want to get to here is the maps and modes, because that's what we are concerned with right here. You have default mode, so this is where you can set the default game mode. And down here we have the default map. Now you can see this is where the problem comes in, because the editor startup map is currently set to minimal default. And so when I close off the editor, it's going to open up a different map than what I have open currently, which is this demo map that you can see the name of in that tab, okay, because that's the map or thing that we have open and what we are currently editing in that particular tab. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to change the editor starter map to that demo map, okay, and you'll notice you can also search in here. You have a browse section that you can search for, you can clear, so you have a clear option, and so on. You can also create a level from right here. Now what's the difference here? Well, the editor starter map relates to the editor, so when you open up the editor, that is going to open up this map. So of course the map that you are busy with, you want to set that to the editor starter map, and then the game default map basically comes into play when you package your game up and you want to ship that. Then this is important to set as well, because that is the map that's going to open when you launch your project basically. So none, I'll just set that to demo map as well. So basically for the most part I have these as the same, unless I have multiple maps and I'm working on a different map, then I come and change that one. Even though it might not start, the game might not start at this particular map, right? But I want the editor to start in that map, then I come and specify that here. But if I have a specific map that I want the game to start at, so especially when you ship this game, because this is not the game again, this is in Unreal Editor, okay? So you are going to package up your game when you are done with that, and then you want to specify a map for that game to start with basically, okay? And you specify that right here. Okay, so with that set up right now, I'll just click save all, make sure I have everything saved that I want to have saved, and I'll exit out of that, and I'll just open up from the desktop in this case since I have a shortcut. And of course this will open up the editor here, and you can see it opens up that demo map now. So we don't now have to go and look for this map between everything else. We can just start working. Okay, back in the project settings. Another thing I'd like to quickly mention here is under target hardware. Now this might sound familiar, alright? As you go through and do the setup of your project, those steps that you go through to create your project in the first place, you go through and you set up or specify the target hardware. Now you can go and change that. So you can change that here, okay, from desktop console or mobile and tablet. So to optimize your project settings for that device. And also you can choose like maximum quality or scalable 3D or 2D. Okay, so the point is you can always go and change these settings, so you don't have to worry about what you've selected initially. So there are a bunch more settings in the project settings. You can have packaging, for example, and lots more. All right, so I'm not going to go over all of these. I just wanted to mention a few of those here. We'll go through the rest of those as we need to throughout the course. Okay, you can see we have all of these actors in the scene, and they have these billboards, as they are called in Unreal Engine, to represent their location in the world. So I can select one of these, and with that instance selected, I can type in billboard, and you have editor billboard scale. You can increase that, and you can see that thing will increase. As I move my camera around, you can see that kind of follows along. I'll just reset that. Press escape. If you have stuff selected, you can just press escape to deselect everything. And so why I'm mentioning those billboards here is that you can click this drop down. You can toggle the game view basically to show the scene as it is going to appear in the game. So all of these billboards and things can get kind of annoying. Okay, can kind of get in your way of visualizing your game and your scene. So you can toggle that pressing G, or you can click this button again in this drop down. You can see those billboard sprites now disappear, right? And immersive mode, you can press F11, and what's going to happen here, you can see it's like it will now maximize that view. This is great if you want to play your game from this view. Now we'll talk about those play in editor, those settings and options a bit later. I just wanted to briefly mention that. So immersive mode is F11, so you can toggle that, and then you can also toggle the game view. That button right up here, you can see restore from immersive, so left click on that and that will restore from that immersive mode. We also have a measure tool in Unreal Engine, so I'll just go to content, starter content, architecture, and I'll drag in this wall piece with this door cutout in it. Okay, and now I can go to an orthographic view, so maybe the right view, okay, and now I can use the middle mouse button to measure, middle mouse button click and drag, and that will allow me to measure. As you can see, this will snap kind of to the grid, so I'll middle mouse button click and hold and drag down here, and so just keep that in mind. It's kind of like it will snap to the grid. So you can change the grid size here, and you can see that will snap to the grid. Okay, so you might want to change that if you want to do that using this drop down here. So that's a quick look at the measure tool. I'll just go back to perspective. Now of course you can maximize or restore this viewport, and then you can go to whichever one you want. So to the right here, and zoom in and out using the middle mouse button, left click and hold and drag to pan around. Okay, so that's a quick look at the measure tool. Now next what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll open up blueprints, and I'll open up one of these blueprints. Doesn't matter which one really. I'll just go with this wall sconce, and I'll also open something like a material. Doesn't really matter which one. Okay, so we see we have this grid, okay, in the material editor. And I'll just close all the project settings for now. And in the blueprint, if you go to the event graph or the construction script, you also have like this grid that shows up. Okay, we can turn off these grids if we feel like, there's too much visual clutter and we want to kind of turn that off. and we can do that in the editor preferences. So while project settings relate to your specific project, editor preferences are used to modify settings that control the behavior of the Unreal Editor. So you can change autosave settings, controls, and so forth. Okay, so that is what we'll look at in this next section. So we can get to the editor preferences by going to Edit, Editor Preferences. Okay, and that will bring up a tab as well that we can dock up here. Okay, then under Appearance, you scroll down, you see you have this section called Graphs. Then you have this toggle, so use grids in the Material and Blueprint Editor. This is set to true by default. You can turn that off, and then you can see that grid will now go away. So this is a much cleaner look. Okay, same thing in the blueprint. Okay, I'll just go to the construction script, and you can see that the grid is gone. Right, so I'll just go and turn that on again. Another quick tip for you now that I have the material editor open, and this also relates to clutter. So if you want to get rid of some visual clutter as you work in the material editor or in the blueprint visual scripting as well, and that is the hide unrelated feature. So you can enable this right here. It says toggles hiding nodes which are unrelated to the selected nodes automatically. So I'll just enable that, and I'll select one of these nodes, and you can see it will kind of apply a ghosting or a fade. You know, it's going to gray out basically some of these other nodes that I'm not currently working with. That will toggle, as you can see, based on what I have selected. And not just the nodes, you'll also see the wiring will kind of highlight or not. So I'll just toggle that again, and you can see the difference. Okay, and the same thing applies in blueprints. I'll just select something here. So this, for example, click hide unrelated, and you can see it toggles these for the most part here. Toggle that, and you'll kind of see what happens. Okay, so that helps again trying to get rid of some of that visual clutter, so you can focus more on what it is that you are trying to do. Alright, so I think I'm done with these two for now. I'll just close off the blueprints and the material editor as well, and I'll get back to the editor preferences. The final thing I'd like to talk about in this video relates to saving. So I'll go to the loading and saving section. You can see under general loading and saving, I have this autosave section. Now, typically how this works is you get a pop-up as you work in Unreal Engine. Often you have like a pop-up that comes up, and you can click save now or cancel. That'll kind of count down from 10, for example, to 0, and then it'll autosave. And so you can cancel that, or you can click save to, to have that save and be done with. Okay, now you have a bunch of options. You can enable the autosave or disable, and you can choose what you want to save with your autosave. So you can save the maps, you can save the content, you can choose the frequency in minutes. So in other words, the time interval after which to autosave. Okay, so you can change this if you want to save more frequently or less frequently. Okay, then you can also change this warning in seconds. You can increase or decrease the warning, or how long that warning pops up, and also the interaction delay, which is the minimum number of seconds to wait after the last user interactions with the editor before the autosave can trigger. So it's not going to autosave, as the user interacts with stuff in the editor. It's going to wait until the user kind of takes a breath, right, before it triggers that autosave. Okay, so I think that is going to wrap up the tips and tricks for this video. So there are a lot of preferences that I'm not talking about at this point. We will come back to those eventually. So there are options for, changing kind of the functionality when you drag and drop things into your world, various handle options, and so on. So we'll discuss those as we go along, and, when we get to those relevant videos. I just wanted to kind of get you started here. Alright, so I hope this was useful to you, and I'll see you in the next video.